Good afternoon. The China Coast Guard threw tear gas, hurled rocks, and used blinding strobe lights against Philippine Navy personnel during the resupply mission for a grounded naval outpost in the West Philippine Sea on June 17. The Armed Forces of the Philippines revealed several footages showing the ordeal of the two rigid hull inflatable boats used to resupply BRP Sierra Madre grounded in Ayungin Shoal. A video footage shows how the China Coast Guard boat rammed one of two Philippine Navy's rigid hull inflatable boats, while a personnel made a tourniquet on the right hand of a sailor who lost his thumb due to a prior ramming incident. Another footage shows China Coast Guard personnel who were seen wielding bolos and pickaxes, which they also used to slash the other rigid hull inflatable boats moored near the BRP Sierra Madre. Furthermore, the bolo-wielding China Coast Guard personnel then began hurling rocks and other objects at the personnel of the moored rigid hull inflatable boats at the BRP Sierra Madre. The China Coast Guard personnel also employed sirens and blinding strobe lights during their towing of the moored rigid hull inflatable boats. During the commotion, a Navy personnel could be heard shouting at China Coast Guard, telling them to stop and reiterates they are in the territory of the Philippines. An aerial footage also shows two China Coast Guard boats crammed the rigid hull inflatable boats, which was towed away from the BRP Sierra Madre. According to AFP Chief General Romeo Bronner Jr., the China Coast Guard should be made accountable for their piracy and should return the rifles and other equipment they looted from Navy troops, as well as the damages they have caused. Manila's regular resupply mission in the BRP Sierra Madre became one of the flashpoints of tensions in the West Philippine Sea, and the latest mission saw the most violent actions from Beijing thus far. The Armed Forces of the Philippines says China Coast Guard acted like pirates as they came on board wielding bolos, knives, and spears against Filipino troops at the Ayungin Shoal. 3 days after the June 17 incident, AFP Western Command Chief Rear Admiral Alfonso Torres recounts how the China Coast Guard personnel illegally boarded the Philippine Navy boats then on a resupply mission. According to Torres, China Coast Guard personnel seized 7 disassembled firearms that were inside gun cases and therefore were not used during the mission. Tensions began around 6 a.m. on June 17 as the AFP deployed 6 vessels, including 2 rigid hull inflatable boats and escort ships, to bring provisions to troops stationed at the grounded World War II vessel BRP Sierra Madre, which serves as the Philippine military outpost at Ayungin. Torres says one of China's own rigid hull inflatable boats was used for a high-speed ramming of the Philippine Navy boats, one of which was carrying a team that included Seaman First Class Underwater Operator Jeffrey Facundo of the Naval Special Operations Group, whose right thumb was severed from the incident. AFP Chief of Staff General Romeo Bronner Jr. says the encounter also marked the first time that China Coast Guard personnel armed with bolos, spears, and knives engaged with Filipinos in the West Philippine Sea.
Lumaban po yung ating mga sundalo. No? Lumaban po with their bare hands. No? They were preventing the Chinese Coast Guard from hitting them with their bolos, their machete, and other bladed weapons. Kaya ako po ay hangang-hanga sa ating mga sundalo. Despite the absence of weapons or certain items to defend themselves, ay lumaban pa rin po sila.
According to Bronner, the Filipino troops were outnumbered by the Chinese forces who came in 8 rigid hull inflatable boats compared to the 2 Philippine Navy boats that were directly harassed.
Gusto ko pong tanggalin yung impression na yung mga sundalo po natin ay hinayaan nila yung mga Chinese Coast Guard na kunin lamang yung ating mga kagamitan, sirain yung ating mga boats. Hindi po natin hinayaan sila. Lumaban po tayo. But then again, may mga limitations po tayo. May mga armas po tayo, but we did not use those. Ayaw po natin na magkaroon ng guerra.
Bronner likens the China Coast Guard's conduct to that of pirates.
For me, this is piracy already. Piracy, because they boarded our boats illegally. They got our equipment. Again, parang mga pirata na po sila dun sa mga ginawa nilang actions nila.
According to Torres, under the Western Command's operational guidelines, when on resupply missions, no firearms will be handled or shown by Filipino personnel to the China Coast Guard personnel. Bronner demands that the China Coast Guards return the firearms that were seized from the Philippine Navy boats and also pay for the damage. United States Secretary of State Anthony Blinken says the recent aggressive actions of China in Ayungin Shoal in the West Philippine Sea undermine regional peace and stability. According to the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines, Blinken, during a meeting with Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo, reiterates the U.S.'s ironclad commitments to the country under its Mutual Defense Treaty. U.S. Department of State Matthew Miller says that Blinken and Manalo exchanged views on how to build on momentum from recent high-level bilateral engagements on issues of shared concern. This development came after a ramming incident on June 17 between China Coast Guard vessels and Filipino boats during a resupply mission to BRP Sierra Madre. It resulted in a Philippine Navy sailor having his thumb severed, with several other naval personnel sustaining minor injuries. According to the Armed Forces of the Philippines, the China Coast Guard also used water cannons and even boarded Filipino vessels. However, China defended their actions, calling it professional and restrained steps taken against Philippine ships near a flashpoint reef in the South China Sea. The Philippines and China have been embroiled in a territorial dispute after Beijing claimed the majority of the South China Sea, including the West Philippine Sea, through its so-called 10-dash line. However, China's claims were effectively invalidated by a July 2016 International Tribunal ruling that stemmed from a case filed by Manila in 2013. Former Senator and Liberal Party spokesperson Laila de Lima is denouncing Harry Roque's statement that Vice President Sara Duterte is the new opposition leader. The former presidential spokesperson previously heralded Duterte as the new opposition leader after she resigned as Education Secretary on Wednesday, June 19. In a statement, De Lima, who is speaking for the Liberal Party, objects to Roque's statements, saying the real opposition has a foundation of accountability, transparency, and concern for the citizens, which cannot be seen in Duterte's track record. According to De Lima, Duterte's resignation only confirmed that the unit team was a mere facade to win in the 2022 elections. De Lima point out that the opposition puts the people first, does not defend wanted religious leaders or the slaying of thousands of Filipinos, and is not blind to the bullying of fisherfolk and foreigners stealing our territories. De Lima did not name names, but Duterte has consistently defended the fugitive televangelist Apollo Kibuloy. The vice president has been criticized for her silence on China's maritime expansion in the West Philippine Sea, despite her family's staunch support for the armed forces. These are the stories you need to know today. I'm Neil Mercado. Follow INQUIRER.net on Facebook, X, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Reddit. For more stories, visit INQUIRER.net. Good afternoon.